the Chugiak-Eagle River land use map and Chugiak-Eagle River zoning code. So that's our background mainstays. I will begin by going down the table and introducing people. This board consists of representatives from each local community council and include the village. We have had kind of sporadic attendance from the village, so they've been specifically invited today. I don't know if they're going to come or not. What happens is the council puts forth a name, and that name is sent to the mayor's office along with some background. And then the mayor and the assembly approve the people on the board. And I want to remind each of you, your terms all expire October of this year. So councils better get on the swing and reappoint. With that, Lee, you want to start by introducing yourself, tell me where you're from?
Sure. My name is Lee Hammermeister. I'm the representative for South Fork Community Council.
Ms. Ostrander, can I say something?
Please.
The Zoom automatically records, so this meeting is being recorded.
Thank you very much. We should have said that. Yeah, we are required, it's a public meeting. We are required to keep record of it and make it available to people. I'm very thankful. For many, many years, we didn't have any support. Marie is here, and it made my heart full to see staff.
So
Thank you
glad
much
to be
for
here,
being
yes.
here. I really appreciate it.
And I'm Sean Murphy, I'm with the Eagle River Community Council.
Debbie Osiander, Birchwood Community Council.
Bob Reagan, Clinton Valley Community Council.
Julie Jessup, Eagle River Valley Community Council.
Will Tagan, Chugiak Community Council.
Okay. With that, I put an agenda. I'm sort of the default chair because I've done that so long, but we will be having elections a little later on. The first thing we would like to do is hear from you. So if you have any comments that you want to make to us, anything you want to say, particularly about the resolution we're going to be discussing later, it would be appreciated. I'm really hoping that everybody is respectful and conscious of the time involved. I'm going to really favor people to only speak once, at least until everybody's got a chance, then maybe we can come back and hear you again later. And I'm also hopeful that this introductory comment testimony period doesn't last longer than an hour. Marie's going to help me note if there's anybody on Zoom that wants to speak too. So there is that.
We already had a question on how can they sign up to speak, and I said just put their name up and I will let you know.
Okay, Maria is our tech wizard who is going to help everybody who's on Zoom, and we will try to involve you absolutely as much as we can. Before we begin this, I specifically asked the gentleman to come and give you a little synopsis. I know that not every council has been as inundated in this as Birchwood has. This issue has dominated our agenda since last October, every meeting. So we have talked about it up to here a little bit, but that isn't true for some of the other councils. So I asked Mr. Brian Hull here, who is the lead litigant in the lawsuit of the neighbors on this issue. And he has graciously offered to do a summary. And he has already asked if you could hold the questions till after he's done. That would be appreciated. Brian, could you come and give us a little background?
You bet. Again, for those of you who don't know, my name is Brian Hall. I'm the lead plaintiff in the casino suit. I'm not a lawyer. I want to preface that first of all. I am, however, by default directly affected by the native village of Aglutis casino development because it abuts one corner of my property. After realizing in October this casino was a real possibility, we contacted a local attorney by the name of Dom Mitchell, who just so happens to be the national authority on Indian gaming and has written 2 books on the subject. His previous legal resume includes being the legal counsel for the Alaska Federation of Natives. I am speaking to you here today to convey to you what I have learned in the last 5 months of nonstop entanglement in the casino development. Much of what I know has been taught to me by Don Mitchell, our legal counsel, and by reading the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, which is no small feat. First of all, I want to make it very clear, I'm not an adversary of any Native community, and I have strong ties to many Native friends in 37 years of living in Alaska. My personal belief is that more than a few in the Native community are against this casino, but I believe they dare not speak up. This casino development by the Native village of Eglutna on the Andola allotment in Birchwood has been in the works for in excess of 35 years in one form or another. It has been defeated legally on at least 3 separate occasions under 3 separate administrations, both Democratic and Republican. In 2021, Deborah Ann Halen, a Laguna Pueblo Indian, as well as a former chairwoman and manager of the 2nd largest Native-run casino in New Mexico, was appointed by Joe Biden to be the head of the Department of Interior. Under her leadership, President Biden also appointed Native law scholar Robert Anderson to become the Solicitor General of the Department of Interior. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, it means he is the head lawyer in charge of all legal representation for the DOI. Some of you may also recognize that name, Robert Anderson, because he represented Katie John in the well-known subsistence fishing rights case, Katie John versus the U.S. government, that went on for 27 years. In February of 2024, the Solicitor General, Robert Anderson, changed a legal precedent and opinion, and I emphasize opinion. That's not a legal precedent. An opinion is not a legal precedent. Dating to 1993, that called the Sansonetti, that was relating to the Sansonetti opinion, which determined that Alaska Native allotments do not qualify as a reservation system and therefore do not fall under the heading of Indian country, which is a precursor for legally allowing Native gaming under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988. All of these regulations are overseen by the National Indian Gaming Commission, which until Anderson's legal opinion and reversal was not allowed to approve the Native village of Eglutna's casino development. However, once this legal interpretation was reversed, the National Indian Gaming Commission quickly approved the Native village of Eglutna's submitted gaming ordinance. An environmental assessment was then drafted by the Native village of Eglutna with the assistance of a company called Acorn Environmental Management out of California. It was then submitted to the public on December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas and New Year's, for a total 15-day period, and extended for 3 days because of overwhelming public comments, demanding an extension of at least 2 weeks. The EA was quickly approved by Brian Newland, the Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, claiming no environmental impacts to the human environment. I beg to differ. To truly understand the legality of the actions by the Native village of Eglutna, the National Indian Gaming Commission, or the PIA, or the DOI, you would need to read the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and its intent. In 1971, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was supposed to resolve once and for all the debates between the federal government, the state of Alaska, and the Aboriginal communities, specifically providing a roadmap on how to divide up equitably all of the natural resources in the state and extinguishing all other prior agreements and contracts. The Native community was then given close to $1 billion and 44 million acres of land. In other words, a windfall by lower 48 terms. What could go wrong? The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act also directly eliminated a reservation system as requested doggedly by the Native community here in Alaska in the late 60s. They did not want a repeat of what happened to the Native communities in the lower 48. So in effect, there was no reservations in Alaska. Therefore, no Indian country status for the Aboriginal communities here in Alaska, which also means they do not qualify for a casino development, which can only happen on a reservation system as set forth by the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. There is one notable exception in the state. and that's Metlakatla, which is on a net island in southeast Alaska. The reasons for that are, as a tribe, they decided in the late 60s to preserve their reservation system and not participate in the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and therefore were qualified to have a casino as called out in the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988. That's a short synopsis. That's a basic synopsis that does not go into the legalese and all of the traction and all of the laws and all the agreements that happened prior to 1971. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer where I can.
We may need you later on, Brian,
Okay.
so hang around.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
So the neighbors have started the suit, and then more recently, the State Attorney General of Alaska has filed suit. The resolution before you talks about that, and it also talks about some of the impacts that we've heard discussed in our community council. But, and I want to emphasize again that the village was invited, and the village has a copy of this resolution, the draft resolution. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to us or make comment on that issue at this point? Go ahead.
I just have one.
Could you stand up and, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry?
being vain. Could you stand up?
Oh, I'm
and
sorry, yes.
Give your name.
Alan Krasinski, I live near, not too far from the casino,
Okay.
on Aurora Borealis. It was just regarding the ninth whereas in the resolution discussing the access via Birchwood Loop and Birchwood Spur Road. I don't know if it's pertinent, but I thought it might be to include in this, if you can still add to the resolution, that Birchwood Loop Road has no shoulder, is not at all easily expandable without major eminent domain impacts on everybody along it. And I would just add a personal observation that in the last 2 weeks, I've noticed increased traffic and increased reckless traffic on Birchwood Loop Road. This week, I was almost rear-ended twice in trying to turn onto my street from Birchwood Loop by people driving recklessly fast and close. And I can only foresee a drastic increase in that kind of traffic if this casino proceeds.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment they'd like to make to us? Go ahead. Start off with your name, please.
Lisa Noah, I live on Alluvial Street, I'm one of the plaintiffs. Some of the problems that we're having compared the environmental assessment and what's actually happening, two different stories. We are getting, noise starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's the screeching noise of equipment. It's extremely loud, and the people that are having to go to work early or late, it's really hard on them. The traffic on Birchwood Spur has increased noticeably, and the dirt from hauling is really, they're not hauling it back out like they said they're going to do. They're hauling it, I'm assuming, down to the Cluton Inc.'s property past the airport, on the west side of the airport. But it's filthy. So what happens is all of a sudden, especially when you get kind of wet weather, is you're driving along at night on the loop and your lights are getting dirty. I talked to a police officer just the other day, and he says, we are well aware of that, and we are being told about problems there having to do with traffic excess, if they get a liquor license, so extra patrol. So they're already aware of that, and the safety concerns, and they're just little things that have been adding up that are really frustrating as a resident, and the noise is just awful.
Thank you. Yeah, for those of you who haven't been down that way, the the gaming hall is open now in a temporary building, and they have started work on the main building. Last week, there was big backhoe in there, big excavation going on. So yes, work has begun on the full build-up. Yes, ma'am. Oh, wait a minute, he's ahead of you. Hold on.
Hi, Stephen Romanelli, President of South Fork Community Council, and I want to thank Debbie for putting this meeting together. The reason why I asked for this meeting is because 2 years ago, we had the Buxton Marston Trail going up in South Fork, and it's increased traffic on our road, and there's no parking availability for that trail at all. So I just want this board to understand that whatever happens in this service area, I know South Fork is drastically different or separated from the Birchwood area, but we are in here to support you full-heartedly. So thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Would you go ahead, please?
Hi, Letta Stones. We live on Davidson, not far, and I just kind of want to add to whatever you're saying. We're getting the generator noise 24 hours a day, which we don't understand why we have to have generators running hard that we can hear inside our house 24 hours a day. And the excavation that's going on there is those two other lots. They're hauling, you can count 3 big trucks on the road at one time, and they're hauling to the shooting range. They're dumping all that stuff in the shooting range. So they do have a water truck out there once in a while, but it does absolutely no good. The kid that was flagging told me he's having to go out with his broom and sweep off the railroad tracks because the railroad's still mad at him because it's messing up the track on the railroad. So it's, I mean, they're going full blast. There's trucks constantly between, they start hauling trucks at 6 in the morning some mornings. I mean, the trucks aren't moving. The other morning, they actually had trucks parked at the shooting range. And so all they're doing is open the gate and away they go. So anyway, it's a little bit more, I mean, they're going for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that generator goes 24/7. They don't shut it down.
I actually called the village and told them that there were neighborhood concerns about that.
Right.
And they told me that that will be temporary. When they get hooked up for permanent power, then they'll be more respectful of quiet hours at night. But they can't shut it off now because the machines need constant power, is what I was told. I also called Muni Code Enforcement, and they cannot respond because everybody understanding, I think, is that they are exempt from local law and state law. They have to follow national law, and they will pick which state laws they go for. But the zoning enforcement is not responding. No.
Does not have to abide by the state.
The casino does not, yeah, between the villages, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Start with your name.
Hi, so Sophia O'Neill, and I'm a resident of Eagle River. I just,
Correct.
yeah, Sophia O'Neill, I am a resident of Eagle River, sorry. What you just stated about code enforcement, could you reiterate that they say that they're only obliged to?
We have been told repeatedly that the casino lands are exempt from any requirement to follow Anchorage Municipal Code or Alaska State law. There was a public environmental assessment document that was issued right after Christmas, and that document stated that fact. And then they also particularly mentioned which agencies they wanted to, were going to follow and which they weren't. And then subsequently, Mr. Marnell from Marnell Gaming from Las Vegas, who's in partnership with the village, met with the leadership of our community council, and he specifically said there's some code some law we're gonna follow and others we're exempt from. But my understanding, I have not heard anybody from the health department tell me otherwise, the city is not gonna be responding to code enforcement issues. The big question one of the big questions is what are police gonna do? Mr. Marnell told us that they will be hiring their own police force for the casino site. And so they will work out some kind of agreement with APD, which to this point, if it has happened, Mark, okay, we haven't heard about it or seen it, and it would be nice to know more about that because people are scared about it.
I'll get you the info.
Cool. All right. Okay. I'm sorry, somebody else had their hand up.
I just wanted to add something, if I might, Alan Krasinski again. It seems a little disingenuous for them to claim that they don't have to follow state or muni law. Well, I mean, it's not disingenuous. They don't have to do that on their own property, but the noise is protruded outside their property. So that is an impact on the neighborhood. It's not just an impact on their property. I can't understand how that can't be it isn't obvious, then, being able to be dealt with.
Well, I hear you. Above my pay grade, there's other members here though that we might want to talk to later. All right, anybody else want to speak?
I want to speak to the board too. On the 12, there's some domino effects to this casino going in the area, especially on Alluvial. And Thursday night at the Birchwood Beach Lake Chalet, there's a presentation on how they want to preserve a street going through. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. That street's called Shawn Street. That street runs basically, it's a short street, runs north and south off of Alluvial Street. I'll stand up so people can hear me. Alluvial Street is a one-block street in my neighborhood. I live at the end of it. Shawn Street is about halfway down Alluvial Street. It runs north-south, goes actually in a northerly direction. They are trying to vacate that street because their concerns are that it would provide an egress point for the casino development and therefore cause a traffic issue going down Alluvial Street and further impact our neighborhood. So they're hoping to vacate that access route and eliminate that issue.
And they're asking for a variance, so that's why they're presenting at the community council. So is there any pushback? Has there been any?
I have heard no pushback from anybody on that issue whatsoever. So I'm expecting it not to have resistance. I have personally not heard from the casino development, Marnell, Native Village on this issue whatsoever. I do not know if they're going to show up to the meeting and offer a rebuttal on these issues or not. I have no idea.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to clarify, who's asking for the?
Sean and Lori Barnett, who are the property owners adjacent to Shawn Street.
Okay, so the current property owners are asking to close that?
Yes, to close that gap or to close off that street, which is a very, very short street.
To close the right of way so there would be no access?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And while you're there, one of the whereases deals with water issues.
Yes.
Could you talk about the concerns there?
Yeah, one of the things that was brought out in the environmental assessment by the native village of Eklutna was the issues of water and the amount of water that this casino would require to come out of the ground. We're not talking about accessing city water and sewer. At this point, this development addresses only utilizing a well system and an on-site septic system, which in their view is a newfangled system which they believe they can pull off. Remains to be seen. However, what they do say in the document is that they're requiring 92 gallons a minute of water to come out of an 8-inch casing out of the ground, okay? So if you do the research like I've done, there's a 1972 document that says the best average that has been able to be attained out of the ground for well systems is 2 to 2.5 gallons per minute out of the ground on average. So how they are going to pull this off, we don't know. But I believe this is going to precipitate a crisis furthermore, because at that point, when they can no longer get that volume of water out of the ground, I'm assuming they're going to be asking the community and the water system to hook up water and sewer, and that's got to come down all the way down the road to get to them, which is about 1.25 miles from, I want to say, Birchwood Elementary, right across from the Chugiak post office. Yeah, thank you. So, that's a feat. So there is a domino thing going on here in a big way for the community, more so than is really being anticipated, and more so than is really being called out in this environmental assessment.
Would anyone else like to speak? John?
John Allen, Bushland Carrollton. Two things that I've wondered about. Birchwood Elementary School is a neighborhood school, isn't it? And is that playing coming to play when it's too close to this kind of business? The other thing I've noticed is there's a lot more traffic going up and down Birchwood Loop. I do have a problem getting out now with trailers. And when it's icy, it's almost impossible for me to get onto the route. that we were gonna, sometime in the future, we're gonna get county. Neighborhood schools, I think, is pretty important. I think, there's, from my way of observation, I'm seeing more young families in our area. And I don't really see young families that are exposed to that time. Thanks.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Gretchen online would like to speak. And you're muted.
Minor details. I say my best things when I'm hey, I wanted to I really appreciate all this information. I really appreciate this meeting. I'll never forget the day I drove around into my street and all of a sudden this blast of yellow and red from a shell station killed the light, my nice darkness I had. And all of a sudden the trees across the birchwood were gone and there was a 3 bears. And that's when I decided that maybe I should start going to community councils so I would learn about these things, because it had been spoken about and I hadn't been there. And of course it has, as folks are worried about, you know, it certainly has made a traffic issue for me, just getting out of the neighborhood, for the church next door, getting out of the neighborhood. It did have a huge impact because it's right by the highway and so is the entrance to my neighborhood. My biggest question is I'm hearing a lot of great research. I'm hearing a lot of, you know, Debbie making really good attempts to connect to people and ask questions on behalf of the group. And what I'm curious about is if the group is interested in some kind of mediation or something to work with them, because I'm hearing every time Debbie gets an answer, I hear, okay, eventually they'll get electricity. I hear there's a concern about water. I hear there's a concern here and there. You know, we have a lot of businesses, big businesses, not little things. I mean, the police department has something that makes a lot of noise at certain times of the day. We all know we have a shooting range that makes a lot of noise during certain parts of the day, and blowing out into the inlet, although I do believe they try their best to clean them up. You know, so that road from 3 Bears all the way down to the police, it's going to, I can't imagine it's going to stop having progress on it. And I know that Birchwood has not added bike trails to that road on purpose because the intent was to not, I can't think of the word, but they didn't want to get on their neighbors' property to create a bike trail. So we've come into this situation where we don't want to widen the road, but we also have development showing up. And this one seems to really impact people in a way that they're very unsure about how it's going to impact their regular life, their traffic. And I'm just going to go right to it. I suggest, even though we're way down into it, I mean, before I tell you what I suggest, back in 2019, this issue came up at the Birchwood Community Council, and there was a resolution to support the Attorney General to oppose this whole plan. And I remember I voted against it, not because I did believe that the resolution was bad, but because the resolution came up so quickly and we didn't have a chance to hear the other side. You know, like, what is this group that we're opposing? That was back in 2019. I heard Debbie say that there was an invitation to put in a village to show up, and I don't know that they have. But I'm wondering, my suggestion, I strongly believe that mediation and working together is the best way to get information and to calm fears and to give people a chance to have ownership in what happens. And so my question is this group, in addition to the resolution, is this group willing to find a way to take part in this and work it out together rather than constantly, it sounds like it's going to be a battle all the way. But it's also here, I hear a lot of fantastic ideas from the community. And I just think that if we can come together, and that means both sides. I don't know why the village isn't there, but then again, maybe perhaps they felt that they could not be supported. I don't know that answer. But I really believe that somehow or other, we need to make it a group, work together with that village so that the people who live by it can feel ownership and feel heard and feel like they have some control over what's going on. And that's all I wanted to say, although it's a lot.
I'm going to interject here because I am co-chair of Birchwood Council, and I wanted to fill in response to the efforts we've made to do that. We have invited the village to come to specifically individually invited the village to come to several of our community council meetings. They did attend in October. At least half the room, I think, was from the village.
Yeah.
And it unfortunately, there are some people, like in everything, some people got mad, and the cordiality descended down in that meeting. Subsequently, we did meet, Matt Cruikshank is my co-chair. He and I met with a village rep and Marnell Gaming rep and talked to them about some of the specific concerns, Gretchen. And the upshot of that was two things. They told us that we should directly contact, if there's any concerns, we should directly contact Brenda Hewitt, who's the administrator of the village, which I have been doing on every issue, and that she would convey the concerns down to Mr. Marnell in Vegas if he's not in town. He also, though, told us that he would be back in March and he would give us an update, particularly on the water situation at that time. That has not happened. We also thought that he was going to talk to us before they started building the main building, and that has not happened. So, Gretchen, we're trying. I generally can reach out pretty well to people, even if I disagree with them, and we really have been trying. The invitation to the village was specific for this meeting. The resolution was specifically sent to them, but they have not participated in this advisory board for a number of years. So it's not just this particular issue. So I appreciate, but it's not been working real well.
Well, I appreciate that extra information. It's very helpful.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Crystal?
Thanks, Debbie. Crystal Kennedy, I'm a member of the Eagle River Valley Community Council, but I'm fairly familiar with some of what's been going on in regard to putting the casino out there. But for me, rather than comments, I have more questions. So I kind of wanted to ask those questions because I think some of it will help clarify and give a little bigger perspective on kind of what's been going on and some of the players that are involved. One of the things that I would like more clarification on is when you all use the term the village, who are you really talking about? My understanding is the village has about 66 people that live there. They are members of a bigger group called the Native Village of Eklutna, which is a tribe. Most of those tribal members do not live in the village, yet they are part of administering the governance of the village or the whole tribe. They are certainly helping to work with the financial status of that tribe as well. So I guess I want people to know what we're really talking about when we're talking about the village, because there is really, my understanding is there's a relatively small part of the Native Village of Eklutna organization that supports this casino. And there are just a few that are involved in actually making this happen. So
Yes, sir. I've been told that repeatedly. However, the only people that have come to us as officially representing the village are Aaron Leggett
Right,
and Brenda Hewitt.
okay. Well, I know Aaron's still president of the tribe.
Right, and as such, because they are representing the governance of the village, they're the people that we're dealing with, not the people who are part of the village that live, on the hillside. We haven't talked
Lower
about that.
48, I mean, I understand
Or
there's
even lower
some that don't
48.
live in Alaska. But
Right.
Okay,
Specifically, the government structure of the current between the village at that site down on the Glen Highway.
okay, so that would probably be the board of
Probably.
governors. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there was still that distinction, that we weren't really talking to people that live out there in the villages.
And not the corporation.
Well, yeah, including a corporation, that's totally different.
Totally different.
Right, right,
You got
okay, all right, thank you. The other question I had was, I'd kind of like some clarification about even the ownership of the casino, because my understanding is that certainly the village has now control over that piece of property. And so Akuna would be owning the property, but the facility, the gaming institution, everything that goes on in the casino is actually owned by the organization out of Nevada. So is there a distinct, that's what I'd like to have, perfect.
Okay, well, Brian and I are both going to answer.
Go ahead, go for it.
Okay. My understanding, the site itself was a long-term allotment for the Agala family, right? And they own it, but are doing a long-term lease to the village.
So it's a lease, okay?
Long-term lease. And in that lease, the control of the property is with the village. The village entered into a partnership agreement with Marnell Gaming in Las Vegas. And as I haven't seen the details of that, it's been described to me that Marnell is paying the bills for at least a period of 10 years, and then they'll redo it. The financing, all the revenues goes through the village, and then they spread it between Marnell and the village. Okay?
Okay, so by virtue of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, the native entities with a native-owned gaming establishment, there has to be 60% at least ownership on their part. That's a law. And it's usually 40% for the management, and in this case, Marnell Industries. And that's really no different with any of the other establishments that have come down the road in the last 20 years, to my knowledge. So it is the native community that controls it. And that has kind of stood the test of time.
And then one more last question. And the state has its own lawsuit.
That's
Yes.
Can somebody update us on what that's about, status on that? Please.
Okay. I'm going to try it first and then you
Go ahead.
okay?
Go ahead.
And all my understanding is from the article in the paper and from my co-chair who has had some direct conversations with the Attorney General, right? My understanding is the main argument is there are many, many native allotments throughout the state of Alaska.
17,000.
17,000. That's quite a few. And there is some real fear that if the state loses control over the allotments, they will no longer be able to enforce fish and game laws, all their state stuff, which are now, with this particular allotment, they are exempt. They do not, the state does not have the power for this allotment, and the state, there's some fears of that spreading. Is that fair, Brian?
I concur, and our suit speaks to 4 different segments, okay?
Talk about the state one.
And so the state portion of this suit speaks really to the sovereignty portion of it. And so basically the state and the native community has gone back and forth on a variety of issues when it comes to resource impacts, resource control, and you name it, all kinds of things. But as far as the casino establishment, the state has basically said they recognize the tribes, okay, and they recognize the native communities here in the state of Alaska, but they do not recognize them as sovereign, and that kind of speaks to the gist of this case. and that's what they're going after. Go ahead.
Sorry, if I could clarify,
Yeah.
I'm the tribal liaison attorney for the state of Alaska with the
Oh,
state attorney general.
wonderful.
My name is Charlotte Library, and I just want to characterize that a little differently for the lawsuit from the state. Is that the state recognizes the state recognizes that Eklutna is a federally recognized tribe, and in Alaska, besides the Metlakatla Indian community, which has sovereign territorial jurisdiction over its reservation land and also over its people, the other tribes made an exchange at INCSA, right? So they maintain their full sovereignty, but that sovereignty extends to their membership, right, to the people, and it doesn't extend territorial jurisdiction over lands, right? Because instead of keeping a reservation system, as was mentioned earlier, INCSA eliminated the reservation system with the exception of Metlakatla Indian community. And because of that, that exchange at INCSA, the native corporations, which are state chartered, state incorporated entities, they received approximately 44 million acres of land from the federal government in exchange for giving up their territorial jurisdiction over the lands, and hunting and fishing rights were set aside, and given regulatory control to the federal and state government. So because of those things, we're not, the state doesn't challenge the sovereignty at all of the tribe. It just challenges the territorial jurisdiction over allotments. So as Brian was mentioning, there are 17,000 noted allotments by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Bureau of Land Management, and because of that uncertainty over who has territorial jurisdiction over them, that's a concern. So
I'm really glad you're here.
I think that's the key thing that I've read the decisions from the Interior, and they really were saying they weren't discussing, and maybe this is a little bit different from what the feds were saying, but they weren't denying that this is Indian country, but the fact is, so that is a native allotment, that is Indian country. However, in order to have gaming, you have to have both Indian country and jurisdiction. So the argument is there jurisdiction? The feds are have basically made a decision that there is jurisdiction, and then also the city of the municipality has established government relations back in 2021. So Anchorage has also given them jurisdiction. It appears that next meeting is going to be in April. If anyone wants to attend the government meeting between Eklutna and the city, that would be the time for us to go to the city to say, okay, this is the channel it's supposed to go through. We are the residents of the city. The city has a relationship with the native village of Eklutna, not just the people in the village. All right, if we're going to go this pathway, that's the pathway. But then the third part of it is the state who's challenging that jurisdiction.
Sure.
So like 3 different levels. And 2 recognize jurisdiction, and you don't.
You might characterize it a little bit differently, but
Okay.
essentially,
Go ahead.
yes. No, I was just going to mention that that the state lawsuit is a follow-on lawsuit. So in 2021, the district court in DC decided for the federal government at the time and against the native village of Eklutna, and said, actually, you can't. Does not qualify. This Ondol allotment does not qualify as Indian lands for the purposes of Indian gaming. And so the state's lawsuit essentially it's filed again in the District Court of DC in order to ask that same court whether we can count on their previous decision as final, or if they're going to reopen it now with the new Anderson M opinion from 2024 that was mentioned.
Okay, Brian, and then I've got a question too.
Okay, so I want to kind of add on to what she said, and basically that's this. My interpretation is that Robert Anderson ignored that court action completely by this opinion. That's my opinion. Go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, don't caution you, that's an opinion.
Yeah.
I can respond. It's actually written in the M opinion that Robert Anderson wrote, was that he was unpersuaded by the district court's opinion of 2021.
Okay.
So of course the state is also challenging that aspect of it, a district court opinion being precedent over potentially what a agency official.
So he did
has
not
stated.
ignore it, he addressed it.
He addressed it and said that it was not persuasive, and then he established his own opinion, which is now being relied on by the Native Village of Eklutna and the Indian Gaming Commission as well to support the gaming ordinance.
Don't sit down.
I didn't want to do, but
want to thank you. It's been hard to get information. You want to go first?
Sure, probably a short question, but I've heard some remarks about some bright line distinguishing attribute of this allotment as compared to the other 17,000. Is there such a distinction?
That is I believe, Native Village of Eklutna would speak to that. And that's part of what the court will have to decide. In 2021, it decided that the allotment didn't qualify. So that's what the state suit is going back to get them to reaffirm in DC District Court. But the Native Village of Eklutna, to my knowledge, that's still their position, is that this is a different style of allotment than the other 17,000.
Because of the lease. Because of the lease to the tribes.
The lease or the ownership?
The Andala has leased it. Andala has leased it. I'm Margie Grover, the president of Eklutna Valley. That's who you were. Yeah, that's why. Is because the Andala family individual allotment has been leased to the tribe. So that's.
So that anybody that's owning such an allotment could similarly lease it?
It's happened before, right? Look at the Unitai case, where the allotments have been transferred to the tribe, and there's cases that look at, is that in country, is it not?
And those allotments have to be within the community. They can't be like random other places. That's kind of what this decision was talking about, is this parcel.
Just a second, let's try to do one at a time.
Okay.
Now, I've been waiting. You scared me a little bit. The interpretation that the city, that there's government to government relations automatically gives jurisdiction, you don't think so? I didn't think so.
That's what I would say. I think the state would characterize that aspect of, I'm sorry, the gentleman from Chugiak's assessment of it is that the jurisdiction cannot be granted by a municipality, but I hadn't heard that characterization before. They do have, yeah.
Okay, the other part of that.
We'll wait for the court to decide, right? So,
well, the mayor put out a letter endorsing the project, and that's a fair amount of the discussion of the resolution today is taking exception with how that rolled through. All right, right now, the jurisdiction issue on the state, I've had people tell me, oh, they can't be exempt from state law. One of the things I did though, when the environmental impact statement came out, is I called DOT. And I asked, do you have any comment? He said, the person I talked to said that should have been submitted to the state, and it wasn't. So does the state, what, are they exempt from state law or not exempt from state law?
I believe that's part of what they're asking the court to determine or to reaffirm.
Okay.
So under the 2021 decision, the state would have territorial jurisdiction over allotments, and that's being challenged again now, right? And I believe DOT did submit comments to the process.
But when I talked to them, they had been
Thank
over.
you for flagging it for them.
Thank you very much. All right, well, that was interesting. Anybody else want to speak? Oh, Julie, wait a minute.
No, I'll wait until all the comments.
Boss, ask you, go ahead. Go in line. He's already
Sorry, but the purpose of the Chugiak-Eagle River Advisory Board is to provide public views and recommendations to the municipality, to commissions, to others, in order to facilitate the decision-making process. And I guess my question is, knowing we can't do anything about the state, that's outside of our as this group, correct? Right.
Well, it is and it isn't.
Well, I mean, if we wanted to do a friends of the court letter or something, but I think that starts getting outside of our wheelhouse. What is it that this group can do moving forward other than advising the administration, the assembly, land use commissions to really be more proactive in consulting with councils prior to making those decisions? And I will reference that the Eagle River Valley Community Council has resolution 2023-05 that is, that was actually in response to Girdwood land use questions when they were trying to build the, expand the ski resort or whatever. But talking about the importance of public involvement and in the public process. So other than going to the administration and reminding them of their role and our role as councils in that decision-making process, other than going to the administration and once again encouraging an update to our comprehensive plan that is more than 10 years overdue. What is it that we can do now moving forward? This is something that has started. If they are not subject to municipal law or state law, what can we do?
Good question. And I knew it would come up. If you have reference to Municipal Code 4.60.105, it describes this board's responsibilities. And certainly a large part of our responsibility is, as you said, to advise municipal government. And if you read the resolution, a full half of the resolution is griping about that. Nobody talked to us. But particularly, I want to read to you number 4, D4 under that section. The advisory board is also, let's see, other land use matters as requested on behalf of an executive department, the assembly, the board, or commission of the municipality or community council. The specific use of the words other land use matters to me makes it feel that it's relevant for us to be able to certainly not join in the lawsuit with the state. But my council now has 3 times passed resolutions supporting the state in their request to figure out what the heck's going on. And so this resolution before you today does the same thing in one of its whereases. It just basically says we need clarity, we support it, we support the state together. So to me, that's appropriate and responsible, but it's something that we can debate. Maybe not everybody agrees. Brian.
In the event that this particular case that I'm a part of is settled and the casino is shut down, the language that is decided here about what happens next with that piece of property will then become very relevant. Because at that point, it's decided that it is not sovereign. So to have that captured and framed and in place ahead of time is vitally important. So I'm glad we're here doing that today.
And yeah, folks, we have no power, really. We're advisory, but it's important that we be allowed to speak. And it's important that we be allowed to represent what we hear in our communities. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak before we get into the matter? Go ahead.
Sure, I've got a question for the gal from the state. Just for clarification, is the state's opinion that this casino process violates ANCSA?
I don't think we've characterized it necessarily in exactly those terms, but the state's lawsuit is seeking essentially the DC District Court to reaffirm its decision that that the state has territorial jurisdiction over the native allotment, and that the Gondola allotment does not qualify as Indian lands for the purposes of Indian gaming. there is an FAQ sheet just for awareness, general awareness about this lawsuit. It's FAQs on native allotments at the Alaska Department of Law Resources page under tribal relations. So if you'd like to check that out as well, it might be a helpful, just layman's terms, no legalese. What does it actually mean? What's the state's position? What are we getting at?
Could you give her a pad of paper so she can write that book down and share it? Hang on. It's on the board.
Can we put it
No,
on
up
board?
there.
I don't know. Have we heard it?
Oh, just
No,
on the board?
that's on the Zoom screen.
Oh, I'm just talking about the
On the whiteboard.
Yeah, so everybody get it.
Who's got good printing?
Who's got a pen that can be read?
We
I'm gonna let
can't,
those two worry about that while we continue.
we can't actually, excuse me. May I speak? We can't read the writing on the board very
Oh, you
well.
can't read the board? No, I'm sorry. All right, this is agenda. Number 1, introduction. Number 2, public comments. We're where we are now. And we're gonna have an election, and then the board is gonna debate the vote. That's all it is. Okay? All right. Oh, Chuck.
Yeah, it's the attorney, governor's office. Since the state's position that the casino is illegal, why hasn't the state gotten a restraining order to stop the operation that's currently going on in violation of state law, according to the state attorney general's office?
Great question. I am not on the litigating team, so I don't know what their strategy is on that front. Thank you for the question.
Is there any way that the public could urge that to happen? Who would we talk to?
I'm happy to deliver that message.
Good. I think that would be great.
I second that.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Paula Ingalls. I'm Brian's better half. I have a question. I know that these allotments, or the allotment itself, only a small part of it is designated light industrial now, and the rest is residential. And they've also, Marnell bought up the 3 residential lots between the people on the Louisville and the casino. So their plan is to eventually that'll be the hotel, bars, all the extra stuff. What role does this board have as far as getting those designations changed from residential to be able to be a commercial lot?
The only property that is exempt is the allotment itself. So if there is another use that goes in, we absolutely can weigh in. And you are correct that the current building, the allotment, construction is violating our code, and I've got all that here if we need to talk about it. Anyone else before we go to elections? Go ahead.
It was a little bit touching on what Chuck had asked earlier, but I did want to ask the representative from the state, had there not been any attempts to seek injunctions against the Native Village of Cluna regarding the construction in the face of both of these lawsuits? Because they seem hell-bent to get this thing up as rapidly as possible. And my feeling is they're doing that to try to present it as a accomplished fact before any lawsuit can proceed and say, well, it's here now, so how dare you rule against us? Is there not any possibility of injunctions here?
I think that's a repeat of this gentleman's question as well, and I'm glad to deliver that message.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, is there any other public comment before we continue on with this agenda of our meeting? Seeing none.
Oh, hold on just a second. Mike Jung-Tong, do you have?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Sorry, this is not related to the casino. I just wanted to briefly say hello. My name's Mike Edgington. I'm from Girdwood. I'm on the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. I've also been involved in the Girdwood Comprehensive Plan, which hopefully will be adopted by the Assembly in about 2 weeks' time. And I just wanted to join and understand the workings of this board and see how you get through work so I can learn from you. Thank you very much.
Well, Mike, I've done a lot of watching the Girdwood Board of Supes to try to learn from them, so we got it.
Mutual appreciation.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right,
Usual short instruction.
stop it. All right, we're now at elections. I have been involved with this board since its inception. I think it's important, it's worth doing. I'm a little bit tired, and so I would kind of like somebody else to step in and chair. So I've done a little bit of recruiting and arm twisting. So at this point, I plan to step aside as chair. I want it to continue though, so I'm gonna keep giving it something anyway. But at this point, I would like to nominate this gentleman right here, Sean Murphy, to be chair of this council for the next year.
And I second that.
What, no?
Oh.
Okay. It's basically, is there anyone else, would you second it, Sean?
I'll second.
Okay, is there anyone else who is interested in being chair? This is what typically happens in our elections. This is like what happens in community councils in general, folks. Okay, how about, we have two offices. We have a chair and vice chair according to our bylaws. Is there anybody who would like to be vice chair? I will volunteer. Thank you, Julie. I didn't expect that. I appreciate it. All right. Is there anyone?
Unless somebody else wants to.
Right, you got a second. You got a second there. All right. Is there any, maybe I'll just say, is there any objections to these two taking over the helm? I want to say a sincere thank you. And I'm around, I've got all the notes from years past, and I'll still be vocal my mouth, I know, one way or the other, so thank you. All right, with that, I am passing the gavel over to this gentleman.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that was the very first thing I was going to say is thank you, Debbie, for all your service for us. So we have basically the resolution in front of us, and I'd just like to move to, I move to
accept it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Debbie?
The part that we haven't really talked about is actually the primary responsibility of this board, and that is, are we in violation of city code, Chugiak-Eagle code, and our zoning? I have a copy of, I hope everybody here knows, we have our own comprehensive plan, and I hope everybody knows we have our own section of Title 21 with our own code. Our zoning out here has a CER in front of it, all right? We also have our own land use map that shows where we generally want activity to grow in our community. We have business districts, we have industrial lands, we have residential lands. This allotment, in my opinion, is not appropriately placed. It is a business. They're planning on 2 restaurants, they're planning on a bar, and they are making money, folks. The zoning where they are currently located is industrial and low-density residential. It doesn't fit the spot. I spent a fair amount of time when this first came saying, can't this be someplace else? Why put it in the middle of our rural residential neighborhood? Anyway, so there's that. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about a little bit more is the road. We spent a whole lot of time talking about road issues. The environmental assessment document on the traffic plan is over 500 pages long. And I could not open it on my computer, and I got a pretty good computer. We did have somebody though who spent, Kim Collins, I don't know if you know her or not, she spent a whole lot of time delving into that. And there are some fundamental flaws we feel with that traffic plan. It does say, however, that with full build out, we should expect 700 to 800 more cars a day going down that Birchwood Spur Road. 1,000. I know, they're gonna refer to 1,000. You're right, okay. A lot more, and it's already been some impact of the fact that Birchwood Loop has no shoulders, no pedestrian walkway, no bike walkway. And for years, that's come up at my community council meeting. Why can't we have a or some kind of way to walk to school, walk up to the park? It's because the only way to do that is to take people's houses, folks. Their property goes right up to the street. It would be eminent domain all over the place. And the council has not ever wanted to push it that hard to get it. There already are some really steep curves on Birchwood Loop. I walked my kids to Chugiak Elementary from where I live, and I saw a school bus go sideways down that curve and scared me to death. We already are seeing heavy traffic from the SPS trust plant, the shooting range, and the airport. And this is going to make it worse. I took my dog into the vets yesterday at Alaska Equine there on the Loop Road, and she said she can't sleep at night because starting at 8 p.m. now, the traffic has escalated so much from 8 to 10 p.m. that it's noisy in her house. They live right next to the vet clinic. It's going to get way worse. There is no money set aside. We pay attention in our council to the AMATs and how projects are prioritized. My co-chair is on the road board and the AMATs advisory board. There is no money set aside for fixing Birchwood Loop North, folks. It's a problem that is just waiting to happen. The other thing is the water and Peters Creek. We talked about wells, we talked about septic. Basically, their plan is to pave that whole 6.5 acres and have the septic system underneath the pavement. The plan, as originally showed, didn't have a snow storage area. So we've been worried about potential site contamination from Peters Creek. They told us in the environmental assessment that the creek was going to be protected by a wall at the edge of the parking lot. But there's real fear that that's going to be insufficient. And there are people who are having problems with regular well demand now. So with this additional well, what's going to happen? So environmental concerns, traffic concerns, zoning concerns, and then the last big concern, I was really shocked when the mayor came out with her letter saying, this is a wonderful project, I endorse it. Because there was absolutely no communication. I guarantee I pay attention. I read public notices. There was no outreach to us at all. We were blindsided. And I thought, do I respond? Do I not respond? And I didn't. Then Mr. Constant, the assembly chair, did the same dang thing. He sent out a letter. This is such a great project. Well, I did respond to him and talked to him at some length. He wanted to know, where's the council resolution on this? Well, we got bylaws. We can't just zap a resolution up whenever it's wanted. We have to give public notice. We send it out. We finally did send in resolutions, but it took a while. There was no outreach. This board deserves the respect of at least communication, and it didn't happen, and that offends me.
Stephanie, could I just
I'll be quiet.
ask a clarifying question?
Yes, sir.
It's a little bit out of order, but this is with regard to Constance endorsement.
Yeah.
That was not pursuant then to any assembly action, is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
So it was just his private
Yes,
endorsement?
that is correct.
Did he represent it that way?
Well, he started on the letter, it was his letterhead, and he said he was the chair of the council. He also said that he had longstanding, well, I don't have the letter, and I read it a long time ago, but I did a point-by-point refutation. So I think it was inappropriate on his part, but, I mean, I don't go out and say, I'm Birchwood Council President, I'm gonna, I tried really hard not to.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us should do that unless we're sure that we're speaking for the group. Yeah.
I think the brevity that the newspaper and the TV station gave it, it made it sound like the mayor had the backing of the city behind her. Just the way they wrote it, it made it sound, okay, the mayor has endorsed it. It made it sound like a council behind the mayor had approved it.
Yeah. I am at fault because I didn't reach out to my fellow council members soon enough on this. This has consumed my council for months and months. And I just recently started sending out resolutions that we passed to you guys, so you knew what was coming at you. But, I mean, I talked to Bob, and he said, I don't know anything about that, which is when I called Brian and said, Brian, you gotta come and give a background here. So I apologize to you all for not sharing more information earlier. With that, sorry, Will. go ahead.
I'm doing a little research. So the mayor's statement was a comment to the EA. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically she starts it off with the municipality of Anchorage values and respects our government-to-government relationship with the Native Village of Eklutna. At the end, she says we'd like to formally share our support for the Native Village of Eklutna as it exercises its sovereignty and pursues economic development, and signed it as the mayor. So I'm passionate, Debbie, and our council is passionate about Chugiak-Eagle River standing on its own and being properly involved in actions that affect our community. And I think that the mayor did not consult us as she should have for submitting that statement.
Any more discussion?
Motion.
Okay.
May I make a friendly amendment? That first, let me just say that I did send this out to my council board and asked for comments and have not really received anything back from them. So I'm not prepared to vote on this from my council. I don't have input yet. But what I would ask is, this tries to put a lot of issues into one thing, and to me, it loses its power. And what I would recommend is that we, and I'm happy to do this, to put this into 2 resolutions. One that talks about the importance of public process and how the roles of the community council and the Chugiak-Eagle River Advisory Board are a critical part of the advice and consent process of our local government. And that,
Only advice, no consent.
well, you're right, no consent. But they're supposed to listen to us. And that's resolution number
I'm sure
1.
they listen.
Well, you can only ask, and then you stand on your soapbox and you jump up and down and say, you need to listen to me, and then nobody listens to you because you're being loud and obnoxious. But anyway, so resolution number 1, in support of the public process and the role of the advisory board and the community councils in the municipal scheme of things. The second resolution would be regarding land use. And if I am reading this correctly, the crux is this site violates our land use map. The wrinkle is if I understand it correctly, if they are not subject to local laws, what's the recourse? That part I don't know, other than the injunction from the state level. But our land use plan is out of date. People aren't paying attention to it, and we need to draw attention to it, including all these issues that were brought up, including water use, traffic, noise, air pollution, pedestrian safety, enforcement, all these issues related to land use. And so I would recommend that we craft a second resolution focusing on the land use aspect.
Discussion, well, so what, are we now discussing the friendly
amendments?
There wasn't a second, right? So does anybody?
I can second that.
No discussion. Will.
I think it would be pretty easy and straightforward to, for the First Amendment, and that the public process was not followed for the city support, especially when our main recourse is government-to-government relations with the city. My council brought this up we were under the impression that it was outside of our jurisdiction, so we did not make a decision on it. So I don't feel like I can vote in favor of the second resolution at this time, because we thought it didn't apply to us. So.
Any other discussion? First, it's sort of a threshold issue, I think. To me, it sounded like that proposed amendment was really tantamount to a motion to table this resolution in favor of developing a new one. And so I guess then the movement would, I'd like to know what the original movement thinks about that. Is that tantamount to tabling this resolution? Debbie?
I don't think so, because you can split, if you look at it, the first whereases are all about the items she mentioned, and the latter whereases are more about land use issues.
Okay, so.
I can do it. I don't want to do it, but I can do it.
But that means somebody has to draft it too, so do we really have something that we can then adopt today? Because it would be pretty difficult. No, not today. When do you think you could have that, Julie?
I could work on that tomorrow.
Okay. And then we'd want to proceed then just with emails? Can we do that?
Historically, we have on the council agreed on issues and then drafted and then gone back to email votes. The prime directors right here.
And in the next.
We could do that. Again, I'm going to argue against it, but we could.
Yeah, we have, most of our community councils will be meeting in the next week or two, so we'll be able to present it to our councils. I don't want to be feeling either way, to be honest. How do you guys want to proceed? You want to table it, or? Well, I'll just make one more remark, because as a practical matter, this kind of thing, Mike can't table it. I feel that I'm required to abstain at this point for, I actually have a fair amount of sympathy with the resolution, but I think I have to abstain because I really have no inkling of what my council would want to do.
Can I have a clarification? Are we just here listening to the discussion, or do we have any input in this? Because if you guys have to decide whether or not you're going to make a decision and vote on something today, is that something you guys can do later? I don't know how this body works as far as those of us who are being in the audience versus on the board. This is my very first meeting.
Do you generally go ahead, David.
Typically, we have the audience participation, that's the public comment period, and then the board discussion is just the board. It's the same way that the road board, the park board works.
Okay, thank you. I was ignorant of the process. Yeah.
Thank you. So the original motion is to pass this resolution. There's an amendment to table it and write up two resolutions, one on process, one on public land use. How do we want to proceed?
It would be necessary to publicly notice with both FCC and the clerk's office. It would be necessary to coordinate with the mayor's office to get minutes again, and it would be necessary to communicate with probably, how many people did we send emails to, Patty? 100? Yeah, to do it. So yes, it's possible. Can I ask a clarifying question a little bit? Julie, when you look at this, the only one, whereas that I think might be questionable on notice would be that since the gaming hall is exempt from all taxes, what's the impact on everybody else to pay for services? There's that one that I don't know which way that one goes. And then, let's see, the code one, the water, and the roads kind of all go together.
Yes.
So what I was thinking is if you just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the first 5 whereases, and then the next few, and then split the 2 results to go to the appropriate result.
That would, I personally might tweak the language a little bit, just because there's some things about, just confirming data, I guess. And can we confirm how much traffic do they estimate this gaming hall will generate? So that might be in the EA or might be.
Yes.
So
I would want to recite some new information on this.
I would want to refer to it rather than.
So it would go as a new recital or change to one of the.
It would be related to the land use.
The engineering study is in the plan, and it expounds on how much traffic they think will increase, and it was a 10-fold increase in traffic, so it spells it out.
And I think this goes to the point of that we really need to update our comprehensive plan, and that part is not.
And then we're
So
going to come back to this 5 years from now when we get that new comprehensive.
All right, well, I'm gonna call the question on the original motion. Do we have 4 votes to pass this? And
So we
send
have
it
to
down?
deal with the friendly amendment first?
Do we?
Yes.
Okay. So let's vote on the friendly to table this, have Julie rewrite it, and we'll get it out to the councils.
Could I say one thing? I can read the room. I don't have the 4 votes. It appears that you 3 are hesitant. So in that sense, I'll support it, but I personally would have wished that we could have talked about it a little more because it seems pretty obvious to me anyway. And I really want this to pass. So in that light, I'll support it reluctantly.
Support the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. So all in favor of the amendment? Aye. Say aye.
Okay, well, I think we can do that.
I'm wondering if I can make it separate. But, do we want to address the issue that was brought up of impacts to neighbors beyond the actual sites? So the noise and the other impacts?
I thought I would include that in the land use side of things that. Okay.
I was just wondering if that's something, because that's something that can be dealt with right now. If the muni, if we want the muni to approach, I'm just saying if they're having a government-to-government meeting in April, that should be on their agenda, that this is impacting.
Well, you might go further and say, really in the EA, every negative effect falls on the surrounding community, and every benefit falls on the owners of the project.
Well, I'm just trying to think of the statement of a decision that I can make without going back to my council that I'm confident that they would be supportive of, and construction and other impacts beyond the property lines to the neighbors is something that we could, is a small enough part that I could support it.
And I think Julie will just include that in the.
Okay, all right,
okay.
just
Right,
trying to
so
make some-
with the passing of the amendment to table that takes care of the original motion, right?
So I'm clear on that.
Yeah, I see you can do it that way.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Any other business?
Could I ask when's convenient, that is this next meeting? Can we schedule it now? Because you're gonna have to reserve the room first.
Julie, you think in the next couple of days?
Yeah, try to get to it next couple of days, and that will allow me to go to our council
And all the other
say-
councils too,
Yeah.
just send it down. Any ideas on the next date?
Abby, did you talk to Parks and Rec about open Saturdays?
Actually, when I spoke with them, almost every day was open, every Saturday.
I recommend a Saturday.
In the back?
South Fork Community Council has already met, so if we could get the resolutions possibly this week, so then I can email it out to our council members, because I know the rest of the councils are meeting this week and next week, so we've already met, so.
We'll send it out to all the councils.
Appreciate it, thanks.
The 22nd would be 2 weeks, and after all the councils meet Saturday.
And I won't be here, which isn't, I'll be out of state. It's just not a big deal.
Well, you don't have a alternate.
I don't know. Oh, well, we have an alternate on our Eagle River Community Council.
That could suit your place.
We could do that this week. Yeah, Chuck, would you be willing to do that?
Do what?
Would you be willing to be the alternate for Eagle River Community Council?
Camille's our alternate.
But she's no longer with us, right?
Well, she's still a member of our council. She's no longer on our executive board. But she doesn't need to be on our executive board to be.
So we do have an
member of
alternate.
this body.
What if it's a week earlier so we could have Sean? Is that doable?
My council doesn't meet till the 20th.
Okay, what's the one after that? Are you back in?
I'm back after the first week.
Then we're starting. It doesn't have to be a Saturday. You know what I was going to say, meeting after, when is your council meeting?
We meet on the 20th, which is why I recommend the 22nd.
So 21st?
19th.
Okay, if I ask my council how quickly we could come up with something. Do you have any idea?
19th or 20th is what we're.
Okay.
And, you know, Jake's the rep, so.
Is he gonna be back?
I don't know, he'll be back, I assume he's gone.
The 22nd is okay. I'm sorry. I misread that.
You actually would have been replaced here.
Let's just do the 22nd.
Okay, 22nd?
Okay.
I guess it's time to notice.
And you'll help me get a notice on it.
Yeah, so I move we have our next meeting on the 22nd and we'll try to reserve the room here.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Good. Motion moves. Move to adjourn.
Second.
So thank you. We're done. Thank you, folks, for coming today. Thank you. If you have questions, please feel free to.